15-year career educator. I have a BA from the University of Michigan and the MSed from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm currently an instructor at Washtenaw Community College, a member of the WCCEA Union, a co-founder for Books for Kids, and a trustee on the Ann Arbor School Board. And I'm joined here in welcoming you here today by Don Mongrain. Don has been an active member of the Our Revolution Michigan team since its formation. He's also the CAP chair for UAW Local 2500, which represents workers at Blue Cross Blue Shield in Detroit. Don?
Hey everyone, I'm Don Mongrain. Welcome to the call. Please tell us your name and where you're from in the chat. Big welcome to everybody who's managing to make it so far tonight. Today we're going to be launching Our Revolution Michigan's 2021 monthly live streams, and we are so glad to have all of you with us. We're being joined tonight by progressive champions, including Eli Zavit, recently elected Washtenaw County prosecuting attorney, who has a transformative vision of criminal justice, Amy Tess-Gerges, who's a leader in the fight for equity among the U of M campuses, Wyandotte City Council candidate Kelly Stec, and Ian Robinson, president of the Lecturers Employee Organization at the University of Michigan.
If you have questions, please ask them in the Zoom Q&A or in the comments on Facebook. And if you're just joining us, welcome to our kickoff, Our Revolution Michigan statewide live stream of 2021. And if you're on the phone, please press *3 and an operator will take your question. Hang on one second. Welcome to, let me just open up. Hello, Kat. And hello, Chris. Welcome from Celine. Thankful so many of you are joining us today. It's great to be here with you all, and really excited about our speakers tonight and finding out some information about Our Revolution Michigan, how we can get involved, and about our membership. We've got a really great show for you tonight, and so thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Okay. Kat and Chris, and hopefully we'll have many more folks joining us for what's going to be a great information session, and great to meet some of our folks from Our Revolution who share our values and views, of course. Okay, so let's see if there's anyone else in our chat who have arrived. Hopefully you had a chance to enjoy some of the nice weather that was out there today. Okay. You're welcome, Kat and Chris. Don, were you able to get out today?
Yeah, I actually was just coming back from the Botanical Gardens down here in Toledo, down here visiting friends, and it was gorgeous today, right up until it started raining.
Right on. Hi, Susan from Detroit. Thank you so much for joining us today. I also try to get to the Botanical Gardens out here in Ann Arbor every once in a while. You know, obviously it's outdoor and it's safe, and great for everybody, family, fresh air, the whole thing.
Yeah, today is one of the few gorgeous days I've seen so far this year, so I will take it while it lasts.
Certainly has a little aspect of muddiness to it as well with those. Are we ready to start, do you think? We got another couple of minutes. Why don't we give it a cover? Mary from Farmington Hills, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you joining us on the call. See if there's anyone else. Okay.
It is just so nice to see everybody finally here. I mean, generally, you know, we've been organizing like crazy over the last year, mostly with doing endorsements and the like for the last couple elections, and it's really nice to finally see a bunch of our statewide members turning out to find out what's going to be going on this year.
Well, we are coming right up here until, I will give you a couple more minutes on our time, and then we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully some folks will continue to join us as we begin our call here for the statewide call. Oh,
looks like we are good to begin. So we're going to pass things over to Preston.
Sure.
Ernie, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me just welcome everybody who introduced themselves in the chat. And I know some of us get a little shy in the chat, so might not be so as bold as to say that we're here, but thank you for joining us anyways. And we'll go ahead. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce one of our co-hosts for the rest of the call today. Preston Van Alstyne is a recent graduate of the University of Michigan, where he studied ecology and evolution, as well as environmental policy. He's been organizing since 2019 when he joined the Sunrise Movement. He now helps to run the Ann Arbor chapter. Preston is also a statewide organizer for Michigan with Our Revolution.
All right, thanks so much, Ernie. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our monthly Our Revolution Michigan Organized to Win state call. Please keep introducing yourselves in the chat. We will welcome you all. It's so great to see so many people active and engaged, and I'm really excited for our discussion this afternoon that we have planned with some inspiring Michigan progressives. We're going to be covering criminal justice reform and why we need to pay attention to who our county prosecuting attorneys are. We're also going to be introducing our newly endorsed, Our Revolution Michigan endorsed candidate for Wyandotte City Council. We're also going to be discussing some serious justice issues with the University of Michigan system, including inequities among the Flint, Dearborn, and Ann Arbor campuses, sobering information about the recall effort to ask UM Regent Ron Weiser to resign or to be recalled, a little bit about student debt as well. And we'll also talk about the inspiring work of labor and the bargaining going on right now by the Lecturers Employees Union at the University of Michigan. And along the way, we'll be dropping links, calls to action, and ways to get involved in the chat and in the Facebook comments. So make sure to check out there to find out how you can stay engaged. But first, we're going to go through a little bit of a reflection on power. Our revolution is committed to building long-term progressive power. We need power to win elections and to issue fights. And we define power as organized people and organized money executing an organized plan to win. So as we start 2021, we are focusing on building our financial power in order to strengthen our movement. That's why we kicked off the membership drive on February 1st. We are asking progressives to commit to building our movement's power by donating monthly. And you should be seeing some of those links in the chat so that you can sign up to become a recurring member and become a movement builder. Over 500 people have already answered the call and signed up to be monthly sustaining members, which is amazing. We've asked folks to give at least $5 a month, but our movement has stepped up and we have an average donation of $10 a month, which is amazing to hear as well. If you've signed up to become a movement builder, let us know in the chat. Tell us why you're in this fight, why it's important to you. Thank you all to all of the movement builders out there. You'll be getting your card in the mail very soon. And let's finish the month off strong. Will you make a commitment to becoming a monthly movement, a monthly donor to our movement and building progressive power in America? If you are making that commitment tonight, also let us know in the chat. Tell us that you're doing so and why you are doing so. And we are going to start off tonight by telling you all our top 5 reasons to become a monthly donor and a member to Our Revolution. And I want to welcome Anna Marta Vinsky from our national team to talk with us about a few of these reasons. Thanks, Anna Marta.
Thank you so much, Preston. Thank you so much, Michigan team. Reason number 1 is that 2021 isn't an off year for the political revolution. The truth is, as you well know, that a lot of people stopped giving after the November election. It is understandable that they think our work is over, but our work is not over. And in many ways, our work is just starting. Trump might be gone, Trumpism isn't, and there is so much to do on all fronts to win real justice in America. Your monthly gift will help us campaign right now to elect progressive champions here in Michigan and nationally who are true progressives, from city councils to prosecuting attorneys to Congress, and to build a firewall against the radical right. Progressive champions like some who you are going to be hearing from tonight.
That's right. And reason number 2 to become a movement builder, we are the only group fighting to make the Democratic Party a truly progressive party. Sustaining members support our ongoing work to elect Our Revolution activists to party leadership from coast to coast. We are countering the influence of corporate interest in our party. And tonight you'll hear a little bit about our work to do just that within the Michigan Democratic Party at the convention that happened this month.
All right, reason number 3 to support our revolution is that we are on the front lines of expanding what's politically possible in America. In 2016, the establishment called our ideas radical. Today, because of our grassroots donors and activists, all the organizers out there, and most of them here from Michigan tonight on this call, the fight for criminal justice reform, for student debt cancellation, and for worker rights are closer than ever to reality. And we will discuss these on all of these issues on this call.
That's right. And reason number 4 to become a movement builder member, we are fighting for change from the bottom up. Unlike groups that fundraise to support DC operations, we are investing in building groups in every single state and putting organizers on the ground to lead local fights to ban fracking, to eliminate student debt, and more. And those are people like me. So your donations are going to support organizers like me who are on the ground doing the work every day to make sure that we are continuing to build the progressive power of this movement.
All right, and reason number 5 to become a movement builder is your personal reason. Reflect on why our movement is important to you and drop it in the chat. What issues are most important to you? Is it Medicare for all? It is the issue that brought me into this fight. Is it the Green New Deal? Is it racial justice? Is it student debt cancellation, gender equity, the fight for 15? The fight for 15 is at the forefront of our fight right now at our revolution. Put it in the chat. What motivates you? What inspired you to become a movement builder with our revolution? Whatever your reason, we need to join forces and pool our resources to transform the world as it is into the world as it should be. So the link is in the chat for you. I'm honored to be on this call with all of you tonight, and I'm honored to be working with the Michigan team on organizing for justice in the state. Preston, take it over.
Thank you so much, Anna Marta, for all the work you do. And thank you to everyone for helping us to organize to win in 2021. As we move now into hearing from our inspiring speakers, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who is helping with this live stream. Wonderful Michigan activists and organizers like Ernesto Carrejero, Don Mongrain, Hetty Briggs, and more, some of whom who you already heard from. Thank you all so much for helping out and making tonight possible. And now I'm so excited to introduce Eli Zavit to you all. Eli is the elected prosecutor for Washtenaw County, where he ran a great campaign led by activists and young people on a message of fixing our broken criminal justice system. Eli has dedicated his career to public service. He formerly served as a law clerk to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a civil rights and public interest attorney, and started his career as a public school teacher. Most recently, Eli served as senior legal counsel to the city of Detroit, where he led criminal justice reform work for the largest city in Michigan. Eli is also a nationally recognized attorney who has led public interest lawsuits against some of the country's worst adversaries, such as banks, the opioid industry, slumlords, and corporate polluters. He now continues to teach at the University of Michigan as a lecturer, in addition to serving as Washtenaw County prosecutor. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, Eli.
I'm really glad to be here, and since Ian's on the call, you didn't mention the most important thing: lecturer and Leo member. But thanks so much. It's great to be here, and I just want to first and foremost thank Our Revolution Michigan and so many of the incredible organizers that helped us throughout our campaign. As you mentioned, Preston, this was a youth-driven grassroots campaign geared towards really changing the criminal justice system in Washtenaw County and setting an example for the rest of Michigan. And we were absolutely driven by the folks across our county, many of them first timers in politics, inspired by the vision for criminal justice reform that we co-created with activists across our community. We had over 120, and that's the real number. I know sometimes numbers are inflated. The real number, high school and college interns working on our campaign, which was just incredible. Many of them are Evolution members. So I'm so grateful to our Evolution and to all the grassroots activists that got us to this point. tomorrow will be exactly 2 months since I've been in office, and we've been pretty busy. My incredible Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Victoria Burton Harris and I, we've been doing what we said we were going to do, quite frankly, during the campaign. And I'll just dwell on a few of the highlights, and I'm hoping we can have a couple of minutes for questions. But on our first day in office, we got rid of the harsh zero tolerance policies that are one size fits all and prevent prosecuting attorneys from looking at the individual facts that underlie each case. Previously, under the prosecutor's office, there were strict policies around, not being able to plea bargain, not being able to get somebody into treatment if they were dealing with substance use or mental health issues, not being able to give young people an opportunity to clear their records. We got rid of all of those on day one. On our first Monday in office, we announced that we were no longer seeking cash bail in Washtenaw County, and we have it. In 2 months since we took office, we have not sought cash bail on a single case in Washtenaw County. And I'll note that, contrary to what some conservative fearmongers will have you believe, we've been able to hold people that are dangerous pending trial, but we're not making it dependent on the size of your bank account. Cash bail is a system in which you are held in jail before you've been convicted of anything until and unless you can come up with a certain amount of money to buy your freedom. It is fundamentally unjust and inequitable. At its very core, it is socioeconomically inequitable. We know that given the racial wealth gap in the United States, it has tremendous racial inequities. And what we've been doing in Washtenaw County is we've been seeking to hold people if we can't think of another way to ensure the safety of our community. But wealth does not play a role in our considerations any longer in Washtenaw County. We haven't asked for cash bail, and we won't in the 4 years and hopefully longer if I manage to win re-election that I am prosecutor. We've made a lot of strides on turning the page on the unjust and inequitable war on drugs. We are no longer prosecuting marijuana-based offenses or entheogenic plants, psychedelic mushroom offenses. And one of the policies that we have not gotten a lot of press on, but is actually one of my favorite, we are no longer charging criminally the unauthorized use or distribution of a drug called buprenorphine, commonly known by the brand name Suboxone. And what this is, it is a medically assisted treatment for those who are dealing with opioid use disorder. When people are using buprenorphine, they are not using it to get high. They are not dangerous. They are good to drive. And if they are using it without a prescription, more frequently than not, it's because they got some from a friend who's also in recovery, and they're using it instead of dangerous drugs like fentanyl. When Chittenden County, Vermont, which is one of the hardest hit counties in the country by the opioid epidemic, adopted a similar policy, opioid overdose deaths fell by 50% the following year. So we are not prosecuting the unauthorized use of it anymore. We're not prosecuting people for sharing it with others who are in recovery. This is a life-saving drug, and we should absolutely not be criminalizing those who are using it as an alternative to heroin or to fentanyl. We've made strides on turning the page on the era of unjust policing. One of our policies is that we are no longer charging people if they are stopped under what we call a pretext stop, which is often code for racial profiling, where an officer pulls you over for a minor traffic violation and for no other reason they ask to search your car. No independent probable cause, no independent suspicion. That often happens to Black people. We know this. That is code for racial profiling. And so what we said is, look, if we see that pattern, we're not interested in whatever drugs you found or low-level contraband charges. We want to disincentivize that. That's something that every prosecutor's office across the country can do if we're serious about combating racial profiling. We've made some strides on LGBTQ rights. We issued a legal directive a couple of weeks ago that said we are now charging as hate crimes that are committed on the basis of somebody's sexual orientation or gender identity. Michigan's statute on hate crimes doesn't actually expressly cover it, but it's my legal view, and I'm confident I'm going to be right on this, that for the same reason that the United States Supreme Court ruled last year that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity is discrimination because of sex, that we can charge hate crimes laws because of gender. So we announced that as well. We're sending a clear message that we need to protect our LGBTQ community. Just last week, and there's a bunch more, but I don't have time to go over all of them, but we released a comprehensive suite of policies around immigration. We are prioritizing the issuance of special visas to crime survivors or trafficking victims that are non-citizens. That's something that we have our power to do as prosecutors. We are not cooperating with ICE in federal immigration enforcement, period. And we were very public about that. And we want our immigrant community to know that. And we are taking steps in every case to make sure that if we are saddling somebody with a critical criminal conviction and they're a non-citizen, that unless absolutely necessary, it doesn't carry deportation consequences, because far too frequently we see folks in our criminal system, lawful permanent residents who may have been here for 20 years, get arrested for a minor crime and are uprooted from their homes, from their families, from their communities for something that wouldn't even carry jail time for a U.S. citizen, which is tremendously unjust, and we're taking steps to avoid that in partnership with the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, who put together a great guide for prosecutors. So I can't take all the credit on that. We do everything in partnership with our community. But I want to say, if we care about criminal justice reform, these are the types of races, these local prosecutor races, that we've got to be focused on. And, I heard talk about off-year organizing, and I'll tell you how important off-year organizing is, because there's no such thing as an off-year. I started my campaign for prosecutor in 2019. That was an off year, right? The election wasn't until 2020, but I got out there. I announced my candidacy in 2020, and in 2019, and I was campaigning for nearly a year and a half, organizing in partnership with activists and groups. But this is important because our message resonates with people. Our progressive message across issue areas, but especially with criminal justice reform. But we need to be having the conversations, and we need to be organizing to have those conversations so that people know, quite frankly, that they agree with us. This is particularly true with the criminal justice system, because so many folks, if you're not unlucky enough to be involved in the criminal system as a defendant or as a victim or as a witness, right? You have no need to really know the ins and outs of criminal justice policy. But because we were organizing in off years, we were able to have that conversation here in Washtenaw. And I'm tremendously honored that the voters saw fit to endorse our vision. I do believe that especially on criminal justice stuff, there is cross-ideological consensus that we need to move in a more progressive direction. But people need to understand why and what we're talking about when we talk about things like cash bail, that we're not talking about murderers getting out. We're not talking about your punishment for a crime. We're talking fundamentally about a wealth-based classification before you've been convicted of anything. You explain that to people, they're like, wow, that does seem kind of screwed up. Why do wealthy people get treated better? So I'm grateful to organizations like Our Revolution for engaging in that crucial quote unquote off year, though there's no off years organizing. And I'm hopeful that we'll see many more victories in the cycles to come as a result of organizing efforts. And so that's what we've been up to. And I don't know if we have time for a couple of questions, but I'm happy to take them.
Well, thank you so much, Ellie. I think for time's sake, we have to move on, but feel free to ask questions in the chat, and maybe Ellie can answer some there. Thank you so much. I know I've been really inspired by what I've seen here in Washtenaw County, and I can feel the excitement around what you're doing. So thank you so much, Ellie. And I hope you can continue to do the great work that you're doing. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, our next guest tonight is Amy Tess Gerges. Amy Tess is a University of Michigan undergraduate, member of One University Coalition, which is a group fighting for equity among the the University of Michigan's Ann Arbor, Dearborn, and Flint campuses. She's also a former communications director for the Abdul El Sayed gubernatorial campaign. Thanks so much for being here, Amy Tess. We're excited to hear from you. Will you just tell us a little bit about the work of One University Coalition?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Am I able to share my screen? Can I go ahead and do that?
I don't
need to.
Okay.
But,
yeah, I think I don't think we can add things into the slides right now.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for being here on a Sunday evening talking about changing progressive policy in Michigan. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm also really glad Ian is here because both of us are going to be talking about issues at the University of Michigan that are important for the University of Michigan's relevant communities, but they're also important for the entire state of Michigan because of the extent to which this institution impacts all of us. And perhaps most importantly, these issues matter because they represent the greatest problems in our political institutions today. And so I'm going to go ahead and walk through why I believe that's the case and why organizing through One University and other efforts at the University of Michigan is absolutely critical in this moment. The first thing I wanted to talk about has to do with equitable resource distribution. I am part of a coalition called the One University Campaign, which, as Preston mentioned, is across U of M's Ann Arbor, Flint, and Dearborn campuses. And it's undergraduates, graduates, tenured faculty, lecturers, the whole group. And the reason why we formed is because Dearborn and Flint students are disproportionately in-state students, disproportionately low income, and disproportionately people of color. And yet they are getting absolutely shafted when it comes to U of M resources. And at first people will say, oh, well, of course, I mean, it's the Ann Arbor campus, people are paying more, whatever. But we're talking about students on these campuses paying 80% of the tuition that Ann Arbor students pay, but getting 25% of the per student funding, not total funding. And so what that comes down to is students not receiving critical financial aid packages like the Go Blue Guarantee, which guarantees full tuition for any student making under $65,000 a year family income. Students in Dearborn and Flint don't get that, and they need it the most. It means students not having adequate access to medical and legal resources, $0 of diversity, equity, and inclusion funding on these campuses as compared to $85 million on the Ann Arbor campus. So all of these really critical things that aren't just important for the student experience, but are important for the experience of Michigan's communities, right? And the extent to which a quality higher education impacts the ways in which students are going forward and bettering their communities. Don, I'm so glad you're here to say that. It's exactly right. These institutions are so critical for Michiganders. They have incredible faculty, incredible staff, and I have so many friends who have graduated and gone on to do incredible things, but a lot of them are graduating with incredible loads of student debt because they're not getting the necessary financial aid that they need, and they're also going through their undergraduate experience without the support that they deserve. So what are we trying to do? Well, we've been lobbying the university regents for the last 2 years now, working with them to try and allocate more of Ann Arbor's budget into the Dearborn and Flint budgets. We had a major victory last summer where we got $20 million allocated to Dearborn and Flint, but A, that's not nearly enough, and B, it hasn't been instituted as recurring funding just yet. And C, we're not so sure that it's going to be going to the right programs. So we're still advocating on all of these fronts, and spreading awareness is absolutely critical because obviously it's not a frontline issue, these campuses. So at the end, I'll walk through some action items that you all could be helpful with. But the next thing I wanted to talk about is directly related, which is student debt cancellation. And I think all of us have heard about why student loan debt cancellation is so critical as a progressive issue, the extent to which it would boost the economy and take so many young people out of crippling debt. But in working for the One University campaign, I have learned so much more about why it matters for equity. So many students in Flint and Dearborn, and of course on the Ann Arbor campus, are graduating with crippling amounts of debt. But even worse is the percentage of students who have to drop out without acquiring a degree that also leave with crippling amounts of debt, and oftentimes leave because of financial strain in the first place. So a really absolutely incredible statistic that I had listed here is the top reasons for students who drop out of college, the reason they said they drop out of college, nearly 40% cited financial pressure alone. And then there are a lot of other issues like health problems, emotional issues, needing to support their family that are directly related to financial pressure, and that's not even counted in the 40%. And so you have these students who are not getting the financial support they deserve throughout their undergraduate career. It takes longer and longer for them to graduate. They can't necessarily get it done in 4 years full time. And they're accruing this debt And then a lot of them don't even come out with a degree. And if they do, it takes them forever to pay that debt off, right? So if we truly believe in giving a quality higher education to people, we can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion all we want. But if we're not helping low-income students and students of color pay their way through college, like just give them money, like I don't want another DEI seminar if you're not giving me money. So that is one of the biggest things that the One University campaign has been working on. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the absolutely, it seems unrelated at first, but it's deeply related. The sort of, I want to say drama, but that's not appropriate enough of a word to describe the news that's come out about U of M Regent Ron Weiser over the last couple of months. I'm seeing a lot of nods among the panelists, but, Ron Weiser, for those of you who don't know, is the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party. Thanks for that headline. Yep. And he is also a regent at the University of Michigan and a major donor to the University of Michigan. He was in 2016 a major fundraising coordinator for Trump, and to this day continues to be a diehard Trump supporter, even though he's a little bit quieter about it. After the horribly violent events at the Capitol on January 6th, Ron Weiser was quoted as saying that he doesn't think that Trump was the reason and that blaming Trump is not productive. After receiving a lot of media backlash for that, he released one statement and then a couple days later released another, both of which said, I condemn the violence and didn't mention Trump. All the while, he works with the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, Michonne Maddock, who helped organize the riots the day before the rally pre-riot and was at the riots, and who continues to spew conspiracy theories that instigated this violence. So what we are really trying to do is apply pressure to have Ron Weiser be denounced, have Ron Weiser be removed, or have him resign himself. After applying a lot of pressure via petition and some press, Ron Weiser had some emails leaked. We're not sure who leaked them, but they were leaked to the press, emails sent to the university president and regents, where he threatened them, essentially saying, you should publicly back me in the midst of all of this. And he said, I quote, it might be nice if part or all of my fellow board members say something about my service or largest to the university. Silence has historical consequences. Remember Germany in the 1930s. So, Don's reaction is on point. Weiser has to go. There are a litany of other reasons I don't have time to discuss, but one of the reasons that I bring this up is that One University's issues, national student debt cancellation, Ron Weiser, and the issues that Ian is going to talk about with the lecturers union are all related. And it has to do with massive elite institutions needing to be better about transparent governance, democratic governance, and about an equitable redistribution of resources to those who, yes, he did buy you of them, to those who need it the most. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that U of M, that we help in any way we can on this small scale, but also spreading that to a statewide and national scale as well. I could list off the ways to help, but I'll also send the details, to be sent out after the call. Essentially, please follow us on social media, and I'll send the handles post-call. Please follow, sign up to be on our listserv. The email listserv is far and away the most important thing you can do to stay up to date, along with social media. And lastly, please sign the petition to recall Ron Weiser. That is something that we're working on, where I know petitions don't always do things, but they apply a lot of pressure. Thank you, Ian. And applying that pressure is one of the most important things we can do so that Ron Weiser continues to say things like he said to the regents, and we get that pressure going. And I'm happy to take questions if I have time, but I kind of lost track.
I think we have to move on to Ian, but thank you so much, Amy Tess. If you want to drop any of those things you mentioned in the chat, that'd be great. Also, we'll send them out later on. Thank you so much for all of your work. And this is going to be a great transition because you and Ian are working on some of the similar issues. So our next guest is a labor organizer as well as researcher and deep thinker about labor, trade, and equity. Ian Robinson is the president of the Lecturers Employees Union, or LEO, AFT Michigan 6244, and the Huron Valley Area Labor Federation, AFL-CIO. He has been a lecturer and research scientist at the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, based in the Residential College's Social Theory and Practice program and in the Sociology department since the fall of 1998. He researches, teaches, and writes about labor movements, trade policy, and ethical consumption. So thank you so much for being here, Ian. There's so much we'd love to talk with you about. But to start, we know that bargaining is going on for LEO and that there's also another labor organizing effort going on at the University of Michigan. Can you talk about what's happening and help our listeners understand how they can pitch in to help?
Absolutely. Let me just say first what a privilege it is to work with people like Ellie and Amy Tess in doing this work with LEO and Huron Valley. Huron Valley endorsed Ellie and backed him in his campaign, and Amy Tess and I have been working closely together along with other LEO people and students, as she said, faculty. That's what a labor movement's about, is these kind of broad connections and building them over time and expanding to the places where we can reach the kind of interlocking sources of inequality and injustice that take time but can be tackled if we work together. On the bargaining front, LEO, which represents about 1,600 non-tenure track faculty on the 3 campuses of U of M, has bargained 5 collective agreements over its lifespan, which began around 2003 when we were certified as an exclusive bargaining unit on behalf of that group. We're now beginning the 6th round of negotiations. That started in January. We meet every Friday, pretty much all day. It's all online at this point, which is difficult in some ways, but also has resulted in a larger turnout from our members because more people are able to attend at any given time than has been true in the past. So that is actually a benefit. We do what we call open bargaining, and open bargaining means that all members are invited to come to the bargaining sessions and then participate in the caucus discussions that happen when we're not passing paper back and forth with the administration's bargaining team or commenting on their answering their questions, et cetera. We caucus, and that's an opportunity for people to learn more about what's going on, ask questions, and make contributions about how we ought to respond to what the administration is saying to us. Open bargaining has not historically included all of our allies, except for 2 occasions last time we bargained in 2018, and it's going to be expanded to include them this time around for the first time anyway. We probably do it more than once, but on March the 19th. So if you can put in your calendars, join us on March 19th. You can drop by pretty much any time between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and be part, learn and see how the bargaining goes, but also show your support for us. If you sign up using the link that I put in the chat that Amy Tess referenced to our email list for allies listserv, then we'll be able to send you the registration details for participating in that. And also, you'll be getting updates on how bargaining is going. We don't really have time for me to give you a big detailed overview, but I can tell you that we're pushing hard in the area that Amy Tess has talked about for parity across the 3 campuses. There's right now a very big gap in terms of the pay rates between lecturers in Ann Arbor and their counterparts in Flint and Dearborn. We're aiming to eliminate that for the entry-level starting pay, the minimum starting pay. Right now it's $51,000 in Ann Arbor and $41,000 in Flint and Dearborn, even though full-time faculty teach more courses in Flint and Dearborn in order to be considered full-time. We're also advocating or demanding really $30 million, $15 million each for Flint and Dearborn, to support the increases in faculty salary, but also to support the 1U campaign demands that mainly focus on resources for students. So that is an official part of our platform. We're demanding childcare assistance modeled on what GEO has negotiated in past rounds of their bargaining. We're pushing for more democracy. Right now, most lecturers don't have a vote in critical issues involving curriculum and other matters of policy. And we think that they should have full democratic rights. We're pushing for job security provisions. Right now, in the either last term or this term, between 30 and 40% of all lecturers were either completely laid off in Flint and Dearborn or were partially laid off. That's never happened before. It's been justified by the administrations responsible for it by pointing to COVID, but in fact, we don't believe that most of it can be traced to that cause and that is not a legitimate reason for those layoffs. They were unnecessary and highly costly, not only to our members, but to the options, the number of courses that students have and the class sizes that students have in Flint and Dearborn, on top of the other inequities that Amy Tess already articulated so well. They're also having to deal with larger class sizes and fewer course choices as a result of these unnecessary layoffs. We're pushing for dignity for lecturers, for titles that would allow them to put them on a par with our colleagues in the tenure track who are called professors. We're talking about a title called teaching professor, that we recognize the importance of teaching at our university, particularly the undergraduate teaching that is the primary focus of most lecturers, and that actually is important enough to warrant the status term professor. And we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. Obviously, the money for Flint and Dearborn and the parity for people who teach on those campuses is a critical part of DEI, maybe the most important things of all. But we also want our faculty to be taught and resources to be provided to help them learn how to bring a more inclusive approaches to teaching. And we want our faculty to be more diverse. There needs to be more racial diversity in lectures, and we're pushing for policies in terms of hiring and advertising that would help to bring that about. So that's kind of an overview of what we're bargaining for this time. It's a very expansive agenda. We probably can't realize everything on there, but we are going to try to make headway on all of those fronts in this round of bargaining. Now, maybe I should turn to the organizing work that's being done by our colleagues. There's the librarians, archivists, and curators. Somewhere between 200 and 250 people fall in those categories on the 3 campuses of the University of Michigan. We're inspired by the new policy that the regents passed last June with support, strong urging from AFT Michigan and LEO and other AFT Michigan unions, GEO and others. And so they began organizing last summer, and they've reached the point now where you may have seen it in the Michigan Daily or in other newspapers that they are ready to collect cards, which can be then used to prove that a majority of them want to belong to a union and that union is LEO. And we have sent out a ballot on Thursday to LEO members asking them to approve a process whereby the librarians, archivists, and curators can use LEO membership cards to sign up for the card count and to approve a process by which we'll eventually work out the details. A lot of them are not yet sorted out about how exactly they will be incorporated into the union. It will require some changes in our structures to fully accommodate them and give them a democratic voice within the organization. So those will be constitutional amendments that'll have to be approved later down the road. But for now, we're asking just for endorsement of the process by which we negotiate how that's all going to work out. And meanwhile, the LACs, as we call them for short, are organizing, and as soon as they get the go-ahead from our members in LEO, they will start collecting those cards. So those are, I think that's probably about all my time, and that's a quick overview of these 2 major areas where LEO is moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, Ian, for sharing that and for all the great work you're doing with LEO. It's great to hear about some of the solidarity work that's happening as well and the lessons learned between the Graduate Employees Union and what's being applied now here with Lecturers Union. So thank you so much for sharing all that. And thank you for your work again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So now we are going to be turning to our section on talking about building a progressive party, and specifically talking about some recent wins that we as Our Revolution Michigan had in building a more progressive Michigan Democratic Party. But before I do that, I just wanted to remind you that Our Revolution is the only group that's working to transform the Democratic Party, both locally and nationally. And your continued support for our efforts is by contributing is always helpful and is what allows us to do the work that we do and makes this possible. So we'll drop that link in the chat again. Thank you all so much for your support. So we had a big win at the Michigan Democratic Party State Convention on student debt. I want to give a big shout out to many of our progressive allies and Our Revolution organizers who worked on this with us, including Michael Briggs of student at U of M and former chair of Our Revolution at the University of Michigan, Don Mongrain, Carolyn Hedgecow, Lauren Sargent, and so many more who helped with organizing prior to the convention. This is a really exciting victory. Student debt cancellation is a matter of racial and gender equity, with women and people of color bearing vastly disproportionate amounts of student debt. It's also a matter of generational equity, with young people and elders, the people at both ends of the age spectrum, disproportionately impacted. So the average Michigan college grad has over $31,000 in student debt, which is not acceptable, and that's something we are working to fix. And we won. We passed our resolution successfully at the convention because we organized in advance in several congressional districts and several caucuses within the state party, building support for that resolution. We had some really great volunteers, including some of the ones I just named, who introduced the resolution in their respective caucuses and congressional districts, and who worked to get the resolution passed there first. And because of that support, the Resolutions Committee included the resolution in their package, which was passed at the state party at the convention last week. Because this resolution was passed, the Michigan Democratic Party has now officially declared support for canceling student debt and has asked Congress and the president to move to cancel student debt. However, not all of our Democratic lawmakers and elected officials in Michigan support this measure. So we are asking folks to also sign our petition calling on our elected officials to publicly declare their support for student debt cancellation and to pursue action consistent with that goal. And the petition is being dropped in the chat right now. So thank you all so much for signing that petition, helping out with this effort to cancel student debt. And next, I want to introduce Hetty Briggs, who is a longtime Our Revolution Michigan organizer who played a leadership role in another big victory we had at the convention this month. Hetty, I know that you've contributed so much to both Michigan Democratic Party and Our Revolution Michigan, where you've co-organized anti-Trump rallies and more. Would you just tell us a little bit about Our Revolution Michigan's role and their recent work to help reinvigorate the Justice Caucus, which was the first progressive caucus within the Michigan Democratic Party? Thanks so much, Hetty. Take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Preston. And thank you, everyone, for doing this and being here and doing all the amazing work that you do. We successfully helped recruit and elect a strong slate of diverse progressive candidates, including a lot of our own Our Revolution Michigan members, to the Michigan Democratic Party Justice Caucus, which, as you mentioned, was, and most people really don't know this, is one of the first progressive caucuses within the Democratic Party. What does that mean? It means that amazing caucus that was dormant for a bit is reinvigorated and is energized and is now organizing within already, and the convention was just a couple of weeks ago, already organizing and sponsoring and supporting initiatives that are progressive initiatives, recruiting progressive candidates, endorsing and campaigning for candidates, and helping every which way that they can, and organizing to be as strong as they once were. So this is exciting. And they are far more diverse than they've been. So that's amazing. But that's not enough. To the help of coordination of Susan Steinwald, who I believe is here from Detroit, and with other organizers from Detroit, we were able to make the progressive caucus slate more diverse, which is a great task. It's not as easy to always do that. So I want to thank everyone for their support. I am very excited for these kinds of wins, I guess. And I cannot wait to organize more. So we can have candidates like Ali. We can support groups like Leo. So thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Hetty. And we are also going to be dropping a link in the chat to join the Michigan Democratic Party's Justice Caucus. You can sign up to do that. And so thank you, Michelle, for dropping that in. And I was wondering, Michelle, is there a question for me or Hetty also?
We do have a question, and this is actually for you, Preston. Mike McDermott, an REV member who's been really active, done a lot of great work, and went ahead and got elected as Westland City Council member to carry progressive values into local government. He wanted to share that he is $30,000 in debt 10 years after graduating from Wayne State with his master's. His roommate, also Michigander, is $50,000 in debt from getting a bachelor's at Wayne State. Mike wants to know, what we can do in addition to signing the petition.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that question, Mike. So if you actually go and sign the petition, once that is done, it will take you to another page where we are asking folks to call their U.S. senators here in Michigan, that's Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow, and asking them, calling their offices. We have the numbers in there already for you and a sample script. We're asking folks to call their offices and ask them to also support the cancellation of student debt, because hearing from their constituents, this kind of grassroots pressure is how we get our elected representatives to understand that we care about an issue and how we force them to act on it. So thanks for that question again, Mike, and thanks, Michelle, for bringing that here. Great. And now we're going to move on to our section talking about electing progressive champions. Our Revolution Michigan is really proud of our work endorsing and supporting the election of Michigan progressives like Ernesto Carrijero, who is an Ann Arbor school board member and whom you heard from earlier, who kicked off this live stream. Also Eli Zavit, who you heard from earlier, Washtenaw County prosecuting attorney, and also working to elect progressives at the national level, like the newest Democratic U.S. senators from Georgia, Senators Warnock and Ossoff. And we know that 2021 is not an off year for our movement, and our members are going all out to win some key contests. Building a down ballot bench of people and policies is so important because change happens from the bottom up. And that's why our Revolution Michigan is working to grow our Michigan bench of progressives and progressive candidates that can begin building the change we need at the local and state level. So those are our future members of Congress or future governors. If we build a strong down ballot bench now, we are planting the seeds of a progressive future, and every race matters for building our movement. So next, we are so excited to introduce a newly Our Revolution Michigan endorsed candidate for Wyandotte City Council. Kelly Stec, who uses she, her pronouns, is a proud daughter of Wyandotte and one of the city's first openly queer city council candidates. She is a current member of the Wyandotte Planning Commission and has previously served on federal, state, and local boards for the American Federation of Teachers. Kelly cares deeply about educational equity, labor rights, and ensuring that those who are most impacted by policies have a say in its creation. Her council campaign is centered on expanding the city's accessibility and transparency and providing young people a voice in city governance. Kelly currently serves as the legislative director at the Michigan House of Representatives and a CDC project coordinator at the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. Kelly, thank you so much for being here. I would love it if you would just talk to us a little bit about your race, why you're running, and what you hope to accomplish as a city council member in Wyandotte.
Thank you so much, Preston. Thank you, everybody, for having me on. Preston, I do want to apologize if I would have thought that someone had to read that bio out loud when I sent it over. I promise I would have made it shorter. But as Preston said, my name is Kelly Stec. I'm running for Wyandotte City Council. I'm running for a pretty simple reason, which is that I love this city. I was born and raised here. I was lucky enough to be born into a union household. My mom's a member of CWA. My dad's an IBEW. My own organizing history runs pretty deep. When I was 17 and a senior in high school, I led a group of students, parents, and community members to Lansing to protest then Governor Snyder's proposed cuts to the education budget. And I remember sitting in the chambers of the Senate Subcommittee on Education Appropriations. And a community member looking into my eyes and saying, Kelly, you have to go speak to them. You brought everybody here. If you're not going to use your voice now, then when? And I've really carried that with me. Like Preston said, I was a proud member of AFT Local 6196 through my time at Michigan State. I'm so happy to be serving in the state legislature right now, as well as doing the work at MOASH. I think giving young people a voice and ensuring that our schools are safe places where students can bring their entire selves and feel safe, whole, and welcome is so, so important. So one of the biggest things that I'd like to see passed if I'm elected to city council is the creation of a youth commission. Wyandotte is a pretty rapidly aging city, and there are all these talks about bringing young folks into the city, young families, but there have been no efforts to engage them in the planning of that. And so it's no wonder that these ideas haven't worked out. So I'm really hoping to get people under 30 a very dedicated spot in city governance, a portion of the budget allocated to them to work on projects and proposals that are important to young people and allow their voices to be heard. One of the other things that's most important to me is an accessible government. I work for the state, which means I navigate terrible websites all day, every day, and I have a hard time on Wyandotte's website. So you know it's not great. I think that folks should be able to have meaningful participation in our city government. Through my work with the disability justice community, I have really taken to heart the phrase, nothing about us without us. I think it is so important that people who are most impacted by policies and proposals have a say in its creation. So part of why I'm running is simply to be a voice in the community who is willing to sit down and listen to anything that anybody has to talk about or any concerns that they want to share. I think it is so important for local government to not only be available to you during election years. There should be regular community conversations. There should be transparency. There should be back and forth. And finally, the thing that I would really like to see is a more welcoming and inclusive Wyandotte. I love this city. I want everybody to love this city. I think everybody should live in Wyandotte. I think everybody should come visit. But I'm aware that as a white cis woman who was raised Catholic, I speak the language of the community pretty well. And I'm aware that not everybody has a chance to feel that way. So what I'd like to do is expand our pretty robust public programming, whether it's our Third Fridays downtown or services that the library provides, to be more culturally inclusive and to make sure that no matter who you worship or what you look like or who you love, Wyandotte is a safe and affirming place for you to build a life. So again, thank you so much for letting me take the time. I'm so happy to be here with you all and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing about your race and for running on a progressive agenda. I'm really excited to hear more about you and follow along this race. I have one follow-up question for you. So this is a time where people may be considering running for office in 2022, considering whether or not to do that, or considering how they might be able to help and support their friends or family members who are planning to run for office. Can you just share a little bit about what you think the impact that local candidates can have on their communities?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. In short, a lot. You can have a lot of impact on your community in local races. I think it's pretty safe to say we're living in an incredibly polarized time where folks sort of really dig into their partisan trenches, and it can be really hard to sort of pull everything out and have a discussion about thoughts and ideas that come outside of the party system. And local races are such a good place to do that. I am so grateful that Wyandotte's city council races are nonpartisan. I'm a proud Democrat. That's no secret to anyone who's ever talked to me. But some of the best organizing conversations I've ever had have been with folks in my community who are vastly politically different than me. But we share the same values of wanting Wyandotte to thrive, wanting our city to be a place where everybody wants to build a life, and wanting a government that works for the people and is there to listen. So if you are considering a run for office, please do it. We need your voice, and we need folks who are, like I said, really willing to work and willing to have those community conversations. and listen to understand rather than listening to respond or to react. I think it's so important, especially now. So if you are considering a run for a local office, please do it.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
Another recently elected local official on. Ellie, would you just want to hop in here and say a few words similar, speaking to the importance of local races and what impact they can have?
Yeah, and you know, I guess I'll just tell a story if you don't mind. You know, it was our second week of being in office, and we released a policy saying that we weren't going to prosecute marijuana crimes anymore. And of course, marijuana is legal now, but there's still some stuff around the edges, and there were old cases that were being prosecuted by our office. I had an assistant prosecutor come into my office, and she said, "What do you want me to do about this case?" And it was a case that was up for hearing the next day. It was a guy who had been caught on an Amtrak train with $300 worth of marijuana in 2016. He was facing felony charges. He was poor. He had gotten a good deal on some marijuana. He'd done what a lot of college students have done since time immemorial. He divided them into little dime bags, and immediately upon being caught, he said it was going to ruin my life. He was apologetic, but this had been hanging over him for 5 years for doing what millions of people have done. I told her, well, you read the policy. We're dropping this tomorrow. And in court that next day, that guy who had spent 5 years with this felony charge hanging over his head, he went into court and he learned that at long last, those charges against him were being fully and totally dismissed. That's the power of local races, and it's the power of local governments to really impact people's lives. That may have been the most important thing that happened in that person's life in the last several years, because local government is the closest to the ground and it touches people in the most direct way. So the national races are tremendously important. They are, but the local races in some ways matter more directly to people. So if you're thinking about it, if you have a passion, you know, I would echo Kelly, please run for those local positions. You can really change people's lives for the better.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Ellie. That's really inspiring. And you all heard it here first, folks. Run for office, run for your local office, and together run on a progressive agenda, and we will have each other's backs and we will win and continue building this movement. So thank you so much to both Kelly and Ellie for sharing that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to another progressive champion who is running. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a race in our neighboring state of Ohio. So in Ohio's 11th congressional district, Nina Turner is leaving her establishment candidate in the dust when it comes to the money primary. Nina has raised over $1 million while her opponent has only $40,000 in the bank. This race is really key to our movement. And as the Huffington Post says, quote, "The race's outcome will either solidify the left's status as a growing force on Capitol Hill or show that the same traditional Democrats who made Biden the party's standard bearer can still hold the line against one of the progressive movement's biggest stars." So I think this quote is really important because it tells us that even though Nina right now is outraising her opponent, this race is so important that we cannot take anything for granted. It is a symbolic race. In addition to Nina being wonderful progressive, it is something that will tell us about what the future of the progressive movement can look like. So you can phone bank to help elect Nina Turner now, and we are going to be dropping the link to sign up to phone bank for Nina Turner in the chat as well. So thank you all so much for signing up to do that and for continuing to help Nina and build this progressive movement. And with that, I'm going to turn to some final words. So just as a reminder, our Revolution Michigan members are fighting for progressive policies like $15 in a union. And by becoming a member, you can help support this important work. Sign up at the link in the chat, which we will drop again. And for those of you on the phone, the membership link is ourrev.us/MIMEM, as in Michigan membership, MIMEM. What our Revolution Michigan is doing is only possible because of your support. So once again, sign up to become a member, and I'll repeat the link one more time for those of you on the phone. It is ourrev.us/MIMEM, as in Michigan membership. So stay connected with our movement. Our next call is March 28th, Sunday at 5 p.m. We're going to be focusing on a Green New Deal for Michigan, which I know I am very excited about. Also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can find calls to action, the petitions we mentioned, and more at our website, ourrevolutionmichigan.com. All of these are on the screen and are going to be dropped in the chat as well. Finally, I want to invite you all to the Our Revolution National call tomorrow night, Monday at 8:30 p.m. We will have guests Congresswoman Camilla Jayapal, Our Revolution Board Chair Larry Cohen, and more progressive leaders. So we have these calls every Monday night. Tune in, learn more about what we're doing and our calls to action. It'll be great. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Special thanks to our volunteers, to everyone who has signed up to become a member. We really can't do this work without you. And before we sign off, we are going to do our traditional Our Revolution chant. When we organize, we win. So let's do this. Are you ready, panelists? When we organize,
we win. When we organize, we win.
We win.
Thank you, everyone. Great call.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.